Yeah.
We are now being recorded for the ages. How long does Zoom keep a recording?
Well, we download it on the computer,
So you download it,
and then
so
our
you've got
audio
it forever.
makes
Yeah.
a YouTube video out of it, so we
Okay.
have it. Yeah,
Okay.
and we'll post it on Mighty Networks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, tell me when we should go.
it's good.
Good?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome to everyone to Finding God in Nature. And we'll have more people wandering in, and we have some people online. And so, welcome to everyone online too. My name is Nayaswami Sudarshan, and we'll have a good time tonight. And I'll introduce a little bit more about what we're going to do after we get done with prayer and meditation. I see somebody outside, I think. So, okay, let's begin with a prayer. And first of all, let's sit up straight and tune in to the power of our breath rising and falling in our spines. In this case, let's feel as if we're breathing with the earth, feeling all the wind that blows upon the surface of the earth is part of our breath, rising and falling, swirling across the globe. Feel as if your heart and your skin and your lungs and your body are all parts of the great globe. Feel as if you are Mother Nature. Now withdraw all of that majesty and beauty and grace into your own heart and offer it up the spine, up to the point between the eyebrows. And now, in that consciousness, let's say an opening prayer. And I think those who are online can repeat it. For all the rest here, I think we won't. So I'll just say it. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Sri Yukteswar, Beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, Friend and Guide Swamiji. Thank you for your presence in every particle of our breath, in every thought in our minds. Thank you for guiding us. And thank you, Divine Mother, for blessing us as Mother Nature, uplifting us, whispering to us, whispering wisdom, aiding us in our meditations, aiding us in our spiritual growth. We love you, and we join hands with you in this great project, this great adventure of self-realization. Please bless our class together. Om, Om, Om. Amen. And now we'll chant briefly, and we'll have a meditation, and then we'll begin.
Out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy love, baby in thy love. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy love, baby in thy love. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy love. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Come out of the darkness, Mother, baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Baby in thy light. Baby in thy light.
Now in our meditation, let's feel Divine Mother responding to our prayer in our chant. Come out of the darkness, bathe me in thy light. Imagine yourself now standing in a beautiful mountain meadow with a beautiful blue sky overhead, puffy white clouds blowing by. Imagine your heart reaching out into nature to feel the blessings and the reality there. Call out to Divine Mother, come out of the darkness, bathe me in thy light. And feel that she hears you. That not only do you feel some passing upliftment through nature, but that she begins to introduce you to all aspects of nature, how the animals live and how they work, how the trees grow, what the consciousness of the trees is, and how they link hands together, link roots together, and communicate with each other. Allow her to tell you about the great web of consciousness that exists in nature, and listen to her as she speaks and see the twinkle in her eye as she says, this is meditation. Watch yourself plunge deeper into meditation and feel her presence in every atom. Let's meditate silently for a minute or two. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Well, welcome everyone to our the final Swadhyaya class of this series, Communing with God in Nature, and with a subtitle of How the Power of Stories Can Help Us Tune In and help us tune into God in nature and in meditation. So I thought I'd do this. Oh, I should introduce myself for those of you who might not know me, and for those of you who are online. And I should welcome all the folks who are online. We are here in the Temple of Light at Ananda Village. I am Nayaswami Sudarshan, and I have a lifelong interest in communing in nature, and also a lifelong interest in meditation, or almost lifelong, as you'll see from a story I tell in a little bit. And so I've had a great deal of wonderful experience in both of these areas. So I hope that by telling stories tonight, I can help us get a, an inspirational grip on some of the thoughts that we can share and some of the things that we can do to use our connection with nature to uplift our consciousness and to help us tune in with God's presence. So, what I want to do tonight is, and I'm going to have helpers here too that will help me do this, is I hope to tell stories and put forth some of these ideas until about 8:15, and then at 8:15 I want to stop and I want to have room for questions, thoughts, ideas, whatever from the audience here in the temple and also from folks online. So we'll be monitoring the your questions online. So put them in anytime, and then our Amati will add those in when we get to 8:15. So I think that was all I wanted to say there. Okay, okay. I remember hearing a story of a great saint, and I don't remember who it was. And this may be apocryphal, I'm not sure. But the saint said, "Oh, communion with God is easy. It's the easiest thing in the world. All you have to do is calm your mind and just pray to God, and God will come, and Divine Mother will take you into her arms." And I think she was putting us on a little bit, or I think the saint was putting us on a little bit, perhaps, because every time I've talked with people about meditation, I've talked with a lot of people about meditation over the years. One of the big complaints is some variation of monkey mind. The mind just goes. And this first story I'll tell you has something to do with that. And now, I used to, when I was younger, I used to get down on myself. I criticized myself quite a bit. And I said, oh gosh, when you sit down to meditate, all you think about is problems with your boss or problems with your work or what is my life about? why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Romantic relationships. Why was it that she or he said that? And what did it really mean? And did I do something wrong? And this all this swirling that goes on, and many other things too, including really really wishing that you could get that nice car, whatever it happened to be. Okay, and you know what happens is that the mind calms in meditation, and then the mind thinks, "Wow, this is a great time to think about all this stuff." Okay.
Right. Good idea. Clear-headed.
Well, all right. So this is happening, and I used to get down on myself, and I said, "Listen, you've got mental and emotional problems, and you need to work those out." Okay. All right. Well, maybe I did have mental and emotional problems. I think we all do to some degree. But also, one thing I was missing, and it's a big thing, and I think a lot of us miss this, is karma. Okay. We have all, the scriptures tell us that we have all spent tens of millions of years accumulating vortexes, swirling energies that are not resolved. Okay? They're not resolved in our life. We've collected them all. They're stored in our spine up and down. Again, when we get calm in meditation, that's a great time for those things to come out and play around. So, 10 million years worth of karma? That's a big challenge. What do we do? What do we do about it? If the saints had successfully done something about it, we might feel like it's overwhelming. Okay, but they have. Okay, one of the things is, of course, as we all know, that Yogananda said, Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga does. I've experienced it. I know. Kriya Yoga neutralizes those waves of feeling, releases that energy so that we can use it in more productive ways. Okay. But another thing, and I want to say that we in this room and we on this Zoom have a secret weapon. It's another secret weapon. Swami Kriyananda used to talk about this. He said, we have our interest in nature. Okay. And that interest, and it might not be an interest in nature. Some people have an interest in music. Some people have an interest in one thing or another. But that can carry you because Divine Mother works with you through that interest and that enthusiasm to help you. I was thinking when we were getting ready for this, I was getting ready for this class, that the skills that are involved in attuning with God and communicating with God in meditation are very similar. I found them to be almost identical to the ones of communing with God in nature. They work together. They've worked together for me. Okay. So, first story. I was going to UC San Diego way long time ago. I believe this was about 1970 or 71. And I wasn't doing too well. I was confused. And I thought, if I take now they call it a gap year. Okay. If I take a break, maybe that'll help. And so I took a break and I went to north. I went to Berkeley, California, and I'd never been there before. All kinds of social upheaval was happening during that time. This was the time of People's Park, and all kinds of the New Age was born, and all this sort of thing, at least in American consciousness. And so lots of stuff was going on, but I was still in turmoil. I didn't know what to do. So I went up to Tilden Park, which is a regional park in Berkeley. I think it's still there. And oak trees growing and beautiful. It was springtime, beautiful meadows with beautiful wildflowers blowing in the breeze, beautiful blue sky, clouds blowing by. And I was just a wreck. My mind was just, going about all the stuff in my life. And I wanted to go see nature because all of my childhood, my parents were both country people. They both grew up, raised in the country, and grew up in the country. They loved nature. They were out backpack. They were backpacking in the Sierra Nevada in the 1940s and 1950s. Okay, with old U.S. Army pack frames because you couldn't get any backpacks in those days. Okay, and so I had been introduced to nature very much. So I knew something was there. I knew that something could help me, and so I I was walking along that ridge and I tried to feel the blessings in the breeze. I tried to smell the wildflowers and I sort of did, but it wasn't, I couldn't get it. It was like there was this veil between me and it. I just didn't like it. I was, what was I going to do? And finally, I got to a paroxysm of frustration. And I just finally, and I didn't even plan to do this, I just naturally did this. I fell to my knees. The ground was damp, so I didn't bang up my knees. I fell to my knees and I grabbed the earth. Kind of like, Mother Nature, I want you. Okay. All of a sudden, I could hear the birds singing. All of a sudden, Mother Nature reached out to me and said, "Oh, hello, John. I love you. I'm always here for you. Everything's fine." And I felt the whole thing. And that lasted for maybe about 2 to 5 seconds. Okay? And then all the stuff came crashing back in. But you know what? It wasn't much longer after that I went and took a how to meditate class. And I learned how to meditate. And I've meditated every day since. And that's what led me to Ananda, indirectly. And so it was a turning point. 2 or 3 seconds. 2 or 3 seconds in eternity. Eternity is eternity. 2 or 3 seconds of eternity is connected with eternity. Okay. So how about something else that we can do? Okay. How about magnetism? Savitri and I have wonderful times in nature. Fortunately, God brought two people together that were harmonious in this way, at least. And we tuned in. We both are tuned into nature. One of the things is just as I just said about eternity, one window into eternity gets you into all of eternity. Okay? Same thing with magnetism. Savitri and I will sit down and discuss. We just recently discussed about another one of our getaways. We try to take a getaway in the fall and a getaway in the spring. And we also try to have a vacation. Okay, so we got 3 a year, approximately. COVID has kind of thrown a monkey wrench in that, but we've generally done that over time. Sometimes we'll take out a map. I've joked with people before, and I say, Savitri and I take out a map of California, put up on the wall, and throw a dart, and decide that's where we're going to go. Okay. People ask us, how is it that you find all these wonderful places? Because we come back and we tell all the wonderful stories about what we did and how we were guided and how one thing and another. And I've got a show and tell here. Remind me to show you guys before we end, and I'll hold it up for the folks on Zoom too. And gosh, and what it is it's not like we throw a dart, but it's like we look. It's almost like we're dowsing.
Yeah.
Okay, we look at the map and oh, Weaverville. We've never been to Weaverville before. What do you think? Okay by me. Yeah. And okay, now watch. Two people's magnetism is blending together to try to find something. Okay. Now the thing is the places are alive. Consciousness is alive in some of these places, and it calls to you. Time and space are not limited in the way that we think of it on Earth in physicality. Okay. Time and space are infinite. They're part of eternity. Okay. So they're not. It's not like boy, that Weaverville is going to have to yell pretty loud for me to hear it from here. Okay, it's not like that. Okay, Weaverville or the little canyon that's up the hill from Weaverville, which is what we found. Okay, is calling to us. Okay, it's saying, oh, you know what? There's some humans that are interested. Let's see what we can do. Okay. And so Savitri and I pack up, and she finds a motel there that's nice, and we look at a campground. We figure that out, and so forth. Okay, this is a story about a trip like that. We went up to a place up in Northern California, almost to Oregon, called Happy Camp. And Happy Camp is wild and woolly now, too. And ask me before you go. I can tell you some more things about it. But anyway, we were staying in Happy Camp, and we had all kinds of adventures up there. We stayed for a week. That was a vacation. And so one day we decided, we saw on the map a warm spring. Okay, not a hot spring, but a warm spring. Well, Savitri and I found that hot springs tend to be really magical, and we said warm spring. Okay, let's drive up there and look. Okay, these are not tourist spots. Okay, but this is what we do. Okay, so we drove up the forest road and we got up to about where the map seemed to be showing the warm spring was, and finally we found it, and we asked some forest workers that were up there, and they, oh yeah, it's right down the hill. Let me show you. So one lady walked us down there to where it was, and this was not a real fancy. I mean, really, it was totally wild. Okay, there was no, it was not developed at all. Okay, it was a little pond. It was only about that deep, a little kind of a watery spot. Okay, and it was warm. The water was a little bit warm, tepid warm, and it was enough to where we put on our swimsuits and we got in. And I got in, and the water was up to about here on me. And I was lying down in it, and Savitri was lying down over. She found her a little special little place there too. And now there's another thing too. I should give you background. As a kid, I liked snakes. I got along with them just fine. So I had pet snakes, and one time I remember I even fed a snake in through here. He went around, and I forgot about it. And so I took my shirt off, and Mom saw the snake fall out. She was a little bit warm, but anyway, suffice it to say, I get along with snakes, okay, and I know how to identify them, which ones are venomous and which ones aren't, and they're almost all just fine. And they have different personalities too. So anyway, we were lying there, and all of a sudden, okay, garter snake. Garter snakes live in the water. They swim really well, and but they live on land too. So they're amphibious. They can go either land or water. Okay, and what they do by putting their heads up and looking around like that is they're making sure there's no predators around. The hawks will get them, you know, and they have other defenses. But anyway, and then they go back down. Now, what the snake was doing, I learned how the garter snakes hunt. Okay, just by watching this one, it would go down, and there was rocks all over in the water, and it'd go like this with its snout around the edges of the rocks. Of course, there were probably insects and crayfish and frogs and things hiding down there. And if they did this, shook it all up, those things would run for it, and then the snake could get them. Okay, his honey, getting his lunch. Okay, and so I saw it doing this. And the next time he put his head up to look around, I said, "Hi, snake," and it didn't. No problem. Now this is another thing. Savitri and Sudarshan are both. Their hearts were pretty calm. Okay, they weren't worried about being there. They weren't worried about a grizzly bear coming over the hill and finding them and attacking them or something. They weren't worried about the snake. They weren't worried about what was in the pond. Okay, they were actually enjoying it quite a lot. So they had peaceful vibrations. There was not a disturbance in the forest. Animals sense a disturbance in the forest. Okay, okay. So this was happening. So when I said hi to the uh, snake didn't react. It was fine. It was only about 5 feet from it. Okay, and I said, "Hey, snake," this just popped into my mind. "Hey, snake, maybe since you're hunting around, you could maybe if you swam down underneath my back, you might find something to eat down there." And I was just I was messing around. So the snake went down and went snoofing around. I had my arms out like this, and at one point the snake came up my arm, got up to my beard, and started snoofing around my beard. Looks like moss, I guess.
Right.
But it didn't find anything in the moss. So it went down around behind my neck, down behind my back, and was going all around down. I could feel it, down there, searching around down underneath my back. Then went up on one of my legs and got up on the surface, started swimming away. And Savitri had a better view of it. And Savitri looked and said, "Sudarshan, that snake caught a frog. It had a frog in its mouth."
Whoa.
Okay. Well, interesting that Sudarshan said, "Hey, catch something underneath my back." And the snake did it. Okay, what's going on there too? This is one of the things I was talking about in the prayer. Show us how it works, Divine Mother. Okay. One of the thoughts that I have is time and space are not linear.
Yeah.
Okay. They're all. Okay. Sudarshan could have tuned into what was going to happen just as much as the snake could have tuned into what was going to happen or whatever. So it wasn't that Sudarshan, with the mesmeric power of his mind, influenced the snake to do this and influenced the frog, which a lot of people think. Okay, not that at all. It's just just tuning into what's going on.
Yeah.
Okay, on an eternal basis. Okay, and also in communication with the animals. Another aspect to this is I have found I've read this several times, but I found because I've experimented with it that animals respond because when I was talking at that time I was also doing this. I was also sending pictures.
Hmm.
Okay,
And you were talking out loud?
I was talking out loud, and it didn't startle the snake
Yeah.
because I'm sure it must have heard me. It heard a sound, but they don't do words, particularly, but they do pictures. They do pictures really good, and um, and the pictures also I've been finding more recently are they're feeling pictures. It doesn't have to. I struggle a lot of times trying to get a very clear drawing, lifelike drawing in my mind of the picture that I was sending. I found out you don't need that. It's a feeling picture, and I don't know how exactly to say that, except that you're feeling the thing happening, and then a picture, sort of a vague picture, shows up in my mind anyway. And so anyway, okay, so allow magnetism to work. Okay, I have another one. Let's see what's the next one. Okay, techniques. Our Native American grandfathers and grandmothers had a lot of time to work on nature techniques. Okay, and I think we've all heard about um, uh, about uh, Vision Quest. Okay, um, at transition times in people's lives, primarily the transition between childhood and adulthood, Native American teenagers would go off for 2, 3, 4 days and fast and stay up all night and cry for a vision, is what they called. And what they were doing was they were seeking the help of God through nature to a large degree in figuring out what's my destiny? Where am I headed in this life? What will I be when I'm an adult? Marvelous thing to do. Well, one day, many years ago, a young man here at Ananda asked if I would accompany him on a vision quest. And now the idea with this is that uh, for safety's sake. I mean, you wouldn't think that you'd go on a vision quest with somebody else, okay? But the idea was that you would be alone, but there's somebody close enough by to where if anything happens, you'd have help, okay? And so what we did with the vision quest was that we went out. I knew an area that would be remote because you don't want to be disturbed by other people. You don't want to run into other hikers. Well, it's a little hard to find that around here, but you can find it. And I went off to an area that was a trail-less area, and took us there. And there was a ridge coming down off the mountain, and it the area to the right of that ridge appealed to me. The area to the left of that ridge appealed to Ian. And so we decided that was it. And we made a little monument. This was in the instructions of our little Vision Quest book. A little monument of rocks, a pile of rocks. And we identified a very distinctive rock that was mine and a very distinctive rock that was his. And we flipped a coin, whether we were mornings or afternoons. And so I was to take my rock when I was to take morning, come over and move my rock. Okay. He would come in and move his rock in the afternoon. If I came back next morning and I found that his rock wasn't moved, then I knew to go and seek him out and see if he's okay. Okay, but as it turned out, everybody's rock moved properly, and we never bothered each other. Okay, and this also, by the way, women ask me a lot. I tell stories about going off into central Nevada and hiking off into the desert all by myself. And listen, I don't feel comfortable doing it. And I talk about communing with God and nature. And I say, well, that's very reasonable. In fact, I've taken some chances myself, you know. but I guess guys feel a little bit more comfortable taking chances than women do for various reasons, some of them unfortunate. But anyway, I said, okay, do the vision quest thing. Go with a buddy. But you want to be alone in the wilderness? Okay, set yourself up to where you're close enough to help each other, but you still got some alone time. You can do it. Works pretty good. And so that way you have the best of both. So anyway, that's a side one. So in preparation, our Vision Quest book, said here's a preparatory technique, and this is the technique that I want to share with all of you and um, uh, and recommend it very highly. They said, here's another technique you can do. And it said, before your vision quest, go out on a separate weekend, not as part of the vision quest, but something ahead of time, and do a spirit walk. Okay, is what they called it, the spirit walk. And it was very simple, very simple. So what I did was I did my map feeling survey, and I found a nice trail, a little used trail up on the northeast side of Lake Tahoe. And I found the trail. It wasn't easy to find the trail, but I finally found it. I walked up the trail, hiked up the trail, and got up over the crest, and then got over to a beautiful mountain meadow. And I had the place all to myself. And I stood at the edge of that meadow, and I began my spirit walk. Now, the spirit walk is uh, just an amble. You're not hiking somewhere. You don't have a destination to get to. Okay, you're just walking and feeling. Okay, and um, uh, let's see. Oh, you start off with a prayer, but there's no formula for the prayer. Just a prayer inviting the nature spirits to help you. Uh, and um, and there's one rule, and the rule is anything that you find could have meaning. Could have meaning. Doesn't have to have meaning, but could. Okay, so Sudarshan says his prayer. He's on the edge of this gorgeous mountain meadow with the dome of the sky above him, all alone. There. Starts walking across the meadow. And in the distance, there's a little kind of a wet spot in the center of the meadow with taller grass and some wildflowers growing there. I thought, that'd be wonderful. So I slowly sauntered my way over to that spot. Wasn't very far. And I looked at the flowers, and they were beautiful. And I think I even tried to smell them a little bit. And I looked at the grass waving in the breeze and everything, and didn't get any meaning. I was remembering this Native American saying from an old movie. Well, sometimes the magic works, and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so I thought, well, maybe the magic's not working. Okay, so then I thought, okay, thanks, wildflowers. And another thing that we do, Savitri and I do, is we talk to all the things around us. People may think we're a little bit weird, but we talk to the wildflowers, and we thank a spot. Whenever I get up from a spot, I thank it, and then I move on. Okay. I think I think they're hearing this. I've got evidence that they're hearing this. But anyway, that's an aside. So all of a sudden, my head turned around and I saw that the meadow kind of sloped up and it went up on kind of a dry slope. Okay, kind of dry, gravelly slope. And so that's where my nose is pointed. I just kind of wandered that way. Just got out of the meadow grass and just got up onto the gravelly, kind of almost deserty slope. And I looked down and I saw something. It was kind of oblong and it was white, really, really bright white. Um, and I knew what it was right away. It was a piece of bone. Some deer had met its end up there sometime many years before. This bone had been bleached in the sun for years, and so I reached down and picked it up, and I looked at it, and I saw something. Now at this point, I need to give you some more background. I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but in my study for the Vision Quest, I had read the Native American story of Jumping Mouse. Okay, and I don't know whether any of you are familiar with it. I think it's a Plains Indian story. And Jumping Mouse basically symbolizes the still little timid part of yourself that is on a spiritual quest. It's kind of like Frodo, the Hobbit, on a spiritual quest. And Jumping Mouse has all kinds of adventures, all kinds of stories about how Jumping Mouse goes from one place to another. He gets tricked sometimes and so forth. But he, little by little, bit by bit, Jumping Mouse achieves self-realization, basically. Okay. So, okay. So back to Sudarshan and the bone. Sudarshan picked up the bone, and something curious is going on the edge of the bone. There's little scratch marks on it, just about the right size for mouse teeth. Mice have little teeth, two incisors that are in the front. And also, I had read about this. I had read that mice and other rodents will gnaw bones in order to get calcium because they don't get sufficient calcium in their diet. Okay. So I thought, well, yeah, this is all very interesting. This is part of nature, and yeah, it's a bone, and I thought, and I was about to set the bone back down again on the ground, and I said, now wait a minute. The rule is, whatever you find might have meaning. So I asked myself a question. I said, what does a white bleached bone out in the desert mean? And I said, death. Now, I should also tell you, right about this time, Ian was turning 18. So he was doing the vision quest between childhood and adulthood. I was about 45. So I was making a transition too, I realized. I was going from adulthood to middle age with all the trepidations that go along with that. I'm getting older. Okay. Okay. So anyway, here I'm. Well, what? Okay. What about me is dying? This means death. What about me is dying? My youth is dying. And then I looked at it and I said, what's the mouse? Jumping Mouse. The questing spiritual adventurer within me. The questing spiritual adventurer within me, which is eternal, is gnawing on the bones of my dead youth to gain strength and energy and blessings for its continued search. You should have seen me standing there. Thank you, Bone. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And then later on, I walked a little bit further and I found some old pine cones that were deteriorating. Pine cones that rolled down, they come up against a log. And, there was everything from fresh pine cones to last year's pine cones, and the year before that's pine cones, the year before that. This is high elevation, so things deteriorate slowly. And I had picked up a pine cone that had been there for a couple of years. And it was old and it was pretty deteriorated. And a whole lot of pine cone had deteriorated away and left the skeleton. And it made a perfect little Christmas tree. It was just absolutely beautiful. And I thought, out of the deterioration of time comes beauty. Okay. So thank you very much, spirit world. Okay. And you ask, and you shall receive. Okay. Okay, how about something a little bit more? Well, let me just check here. Yeah, help more directly with meditation. Okay, this story has to do with. Oh, we're doing fine for time. This story has to do uh, with um, with meditation more, although it has an element of nature. Okay. And remember that Sudarshan, when you're listening to this story, Sudarshan had finally gotten to a point. This was many years ago, too. So he was in the middle of his evolution with this. But he got used to the idea that messages do come through. Things are happening around. Okay. There's a bigger world. There's a much bigger world. More recently, I've been realizing that this little guy right here is just the tip of the iceberg of who this is. Okay. We what does Swami used to quote the ancient Hermetic teachings? He used to say, "Thou art of old, O Son of Man. Thou art of everlasting." Okay, you are eternal. You are God. Okay. What you're trying to do is just like what we're talking about tonight. You're trying to tune in to that reality, trying to find out how does it really work? How does it really work? It's not just, oh yes, Master is helping me. Okay. Well, how's Master helping you? What process is he going through? Which karmas is he working with? He might be going, oh yeah, okay, oh that's a dilly, okay, and he said, okay, Aramati's got her consciousness just right for this. Okay, let's get in there. Okay, it's not this vague thing. It's it's real. Okay, and the masters and the nature spirits are have wonderful sense of humor.
Mhm.
I've had nature spirits mess with me before, but it's kindly. It's kindly humor. They'll poke me up real good, but it's kindly. Okay. So, and maybe we can tell a story about that. I think we may have time tonight. Okay. But anyway, here's a story about more about meditation. Many years ago, back in the 1980s, actually, Savitri and I were able to build a house at Ananda. We built it at Ayodhya Cluster, with that cluster of houses that's uphill from the Crystal Hermitage. We built the second to the last building in that cluster. Okay, and um, and so this is a little bit after that when we moved into that house briefly. We didn't live in it very long. We were part of the Ananda curse. As soon as you build a house, you get sent off to a colony, which happened to us a few times, but more than once. So uh, so anyway, but we were there, and there was a kitty cat that lived in the cluster. Now, Savitri and I are both cat people. We've had a couple of cats over time, but we tend, it tends to be more rare. So we don't always have a cat. We don't have a cat now, but we had lost our previous cat maybe a year or two before, and we just weren't getting another one for a while anyway. And we were tricked into getting the next one, but that's another story. So, and we were glad it happened too. Um, but anyway, in the cluster at that time lived a cat named Favorite. Now, Favorite was something of an extraordinary cat. He was a big, fluffy, a pumpkin-colored tomcat. I think he'd been fixed at some point in his career. Favorite had never belonged to anybody. He always, some human or other, would take it upon themselves to buy him food and make sure he got fed and get him to the vet occasionally and whatever it was he needed. But he was always everybody's cat. And he'd been around for like years. Uh, and he was getting old at this point. Well, Savitri and I had an open door policy where Favorite was concerned. So we kept our door open a crack so he could come in and go out whenever he wanted to, in appropriate weather anyway. And so this was a good weather. Uh, and whoever had taken Favorite to the vet last had reported to everybody in the cluster that, the vet said, well, he probably didn't have much longer. He was getting pretty old. But he was still getting around. He was just kind of slow when he slept a lot. Okay. And indeed, he did die not too long after this experience. So Sudarshan had been meditating. I'd been meditating in our meditation room there in the house, and I'd just gotten up. It was time to fix breakfast, get ready to go to work, and so I was walking from the meditation room into the combination kitchen living room, which had our front door going off of it. And I walked in, and my gaze happened to go over to the easy chair, and there was Favorite curled up asleep on the easy chair, and he just looked really cute. And I just stopped. I just stopped and I looked, and I just remembered knowing him up at the meditation retreat when we knew him there, and we'd known him several places all around Ananda, and I was just you know. I was just really glad to see Favorite. And I also was conscious of the fact that he might be leaving us soon. And so, it was just a moment. I was having a moment. And a thought came into my mind, and thoughts pop into your mind, and it was a pretty clear thought. It was pretty, it was pretty direct. Okay. And it said, you're adoring that cat. And I thought, and the kind of the masculine sort of macho part of me that doesn't like to be caught adoring anything was kind of bristling, you know. And I watched that bristling happen, and then I thought, wait a minute, it's true. I am adoring that cat. And I said, I'm adoring that cat, and I'm proud of it. I'm glad I am. Okay. Then the same voice came again, clear as a bell, said, that's what we're doing with you. Who is this?
You look around.
What, because see, this is a good thing to do. The important thing to do when you're working with spirit is to start to recognize when it's your own thoughts and when it's coming from a broader energy.
Yeah.
It's still your own thoughts, okay, but it's your greater self thoughts, okay, because your greater self is part of everything, okay. So I was enough hip to this. I was surprised. I was real surprised, but I was enough hip to this to think I got to ride with this experience, okay. Because it's easy. At first, when these things start happening, you go, wow, and you get all excited and all freaked out, and you create a disturbance in the force.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
you know, and so anyway, okay, I got to ride with this. Okay, I'm going to go with it. Well, all of a sudden, sort of this waking daydream kind of, maybe not a vision quite, but happened, and it went back to Sudarshan about an hour and a half before, finishing brushing his teeth and washing his face and walking into the meditation room, getting ready to meditate. Okay. So I watched Sudarshan walk in there. He got down on his meditation bench. He said his prayer. He did his preparatory breathing exercises, and he launched into Hong Sa. Okay. And of course, I was inside Sudarshan too, watching this. And also, you should know, um, hovering above Sudarshan were a couple of guys.
Couple cats.
A couple of guys,
Oh God.
men, okay, sort of in their astral form, okay. I mean, not heavy or anything, just floating consciousnesses, and they're kind of like duffers, kind of like old guys. They were like kind of old guys that fixed radios, okay, and they had tools, like soldering irons and screwdrivers and stuff like that. The kind of astral version of it. And since that time, I've labeled them as Joe and Harry. I didn't know their names at that point. Probably doesn't matter. But anyway, getting back to Sudarshan, Sudarshan doesn't see him. He doesn't know anything about this. And so Sudarshan starts in on Hong Sa. Okay, so just nothing but Hong Sa. Yeah. In the middle of the next Hong, out on Jungle Trail, an old pickup truck goes rolling by. Jungle Trail is not too far away from it. There's traffic. Happens. You just got to get used to it. Okay. Rattle, 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 clatter, clatter, clatter. And Sudarshan thinks, pickup truck, huh? Yeah, by the sound of it, it's kind of old and rattly. Yeah. Uncle Mort had a pickup truck like that. And he had that big old dog. And he used to take us, he let us ride in the back. Oh, he couldn't let kids ride in the back of a pickup truck nowadays. But boy, we sure had such a good time then. And you know how it goes, right? Yeah. Okay. And so all of a sudden, Sudarshan goes, oh, wait a minute. I'm meditating. Okay. Hong Sa. Joe and Harry, I was given to understand, they're astral radio technicians. Okay. Now remember that what Yogananda said about that we've got a spiritual radio in our being. Okay. It's old and it hasn't been used for a long time. The dials are kind of jammed up. You know, grease is oxidized in them. They're rusty. You know, some transistors are blown. You know, the whole thing, the case isn't right. You know, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't work, but it's all there. This is the spiritual radio that helps you commune with God. It gets you tuned in with God. And you were born with it. You are God, so you got it. It's just that because of your, existence here, it's gotten to where it's not very workable. Joe and Harry know how to fix it. Okay. But the problem with Joe and Harry is they can only get into work when you're focused. Okay. So Sudarshan goes back. He says, I got to meditate. So and pretty soon. So, might only last for about a second and a half. Okay. Before I get distracted again. Joe and Harry are watching. Get in there. They get in. Okay. They start working. Okay. Okay. And then Sudarshan gets distracted again. Okay. They got to get out. And they say, did you make a connection? I made two. These guys are super patient. They're assigned to you for the duration. Okay. However long that is. Okay. You have made a contract with Master. I'm going to make spiritual progress. Okay. And Master, sure, fine. There's a system for that. And here's the teachings and everything. But the teachings are kind of an outline. And the reality is way bigger than we could ever imagine. Okay. Now I can't tell you for sure that I saw Joe and Harry. Okay. This could have been a nice imaginary thing that Sudarshan went through. Could easily have been. Okay. But it had a ring of truth to me. And also I had that experience of that's what we're doing with you. Okay. Something was going on. All right. Yeah. Well, what it did was it helped me see, well, okay. Now what happened that time when I'd been meditating for like 8 years, or 12 years, probably more like. And I had my eyes closed. I had a pretty good meditation. I had my eyes closed, and there was some kind of a glow, up around in here. And I was going, yeah, you dang thing. I don't need to see these genes. I think it must be something with my optic nerve. It's screwed up. And so I was trying to ignore it. And after a while, it sort of formed into this like glowing ball. Okay. And then at one point, yeah, come on. And at one point, it started to have a kind of a dark center in it. And and all of a sudden, I thought, that's the spiritual eye. Well, you know what happened. Gone. Gone. Okay. But and it was and I said, oh, I messed up. I got excited. I know. Master said you're not supposed to get excited. Okay, I'll get really calm. And it'll come back. Didn't come back. You know what? It came back about 9 months later. I had another view. Okay. And I think, oh, I must have messed up really bad. I messed up my spiritual progress. Why aren't I seeing the spiritual eye again? I did once, didn't I? Okay. Now, let's look at it from another perspective. Joe and Harry I had finally been calm enough to where Joe and Harry probably got 87,000 connections to me. In any given meditation, maybe they can make 5. Okay. There's a lot to do. I mean, it's extremely complicated radio. Okay. They had finally got the light visualization component of the radio to where they could beta test it. Okay. They finally got it enough to where if they hooked up a temporary battery to it and shot some juice into it, it might work. And so that was the day when Sudarshan saw the spiritual eye forming. Okay. And the Sudarshan got all excited, and Joe and Harry said, I think we blew a transistor. All right. Well, we'll get to it. and Sudarshan's all in the dumps because he thinks he messed something up. Okay, which maybe he did, but Joe and Harry, if they could talk to him, which they may be trying to talk to him, say, hey, look, chill, it's going to be okay. We got work to do. We could do it. You can really help if you get calm. Okay, okay, how does it really work? Okay, how does it really work? Okay, now this again is um, uh, okay. Now I think we've got time for this other story. Okay, I'm so happy. Okay, getting back to nature. Okay, and I'm going to try to get this right because I didn't review it, but it's a good story. Savitri and I went out to Usal Beach not too long ago, maybe 5, 6 years ago. Before you go to Usal Beach, it's out on the coast in California. Ask me because it's a wild and woolly place, or at least it was when we went there. But it's gorgeous and it's magical. Okay, we had a wonderful time there. The main thing is that there's got some kind of rowdies that show up there, but which can make it a interesting experience. But anyway, we made it through all that and we did okay. Uh, One day I decided to take a walk, and I had been called. I saw this canyon going off up the side of the road, and there's redwoods growing there, and coast redwoods, and beautiful big old redwoods. Although it had been logged before, so but it's gorgeous, gorgeous. So, and these redwood groves, they're just you walk into a redwood grove, and the silence is it's just strong. It's like the trees are meditating. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'd been called up there. The little creek that came out of that canyon flowed right by our campsite, just about this wide, just a teeny little rill of water that came out of there. So I told Savitri about where I was going. We always try to check in and make sure we know where the person's going and when they hope to be back, so they don't, for safety's sake. So I took off. I hiked up there and I went to the road and I knew there had to be a little trail going up that canyon. I went up and down that road 2 or 3 times. I couldn't find anything. And then finally, I went back to one place, and if you parted the bushes a little bit, there was just the slightest whisper of a trail going through there. It looked like it was hidden to me later on. Later on, I decided it's probably a hidden trail. People didn't want people going.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, I walked in on it. Pretty soon, the trail got wider. It was actually a real trail. Went across a little bench and went up, and there's actually a sign up there. It had Henningsen Family Grove or something like that. Okay, so it was somebody's special place, but it was part of the state park too. So, so I walked past that, and I got out among some beautiful towering redwoods right next to the little creek up there. And I looked around, yeah, and I told Savitri about what my itinerary was. I kind of looked at my watch and said, yeah, I probably got to get going and, keep on going. And, because I was going to go up on the ridge too. And I didn't want to hold up Savitri or make her worry or anything like that. And this kind of feeling, it wasn't a voice, it was a feeling. It said, Sudarshan, just calm down. Just sit down here and be here for a while. Okay. So I apologized to the redwood oxalis, which was covering the ground. It's kind of a ground cover there. And I smushed it a little bit, and I sat down, laid down my pack, and sat down, and I meditated for a little while. And pardon me, I hope I get this right, but I think I meditated for a little while, and then I opened my eyes, and it was just so unbelievably peaceful there. It was wonderful. Places like that, it's like the nature spirits are alive and well, and they're doing all kinds of stuff. They're going through their process. Swami said that the astral beings in general have their own evolutionary process. It's a different uh, process than humans have. I don't know why, but uh, but there's lots of stories about this, and I've had opportunities to connect with them to some degree. In fact, a lot, really. in one, which is way too. I've got an epic story, which one of these days I hope to write about from seclusion about connecting with the mouse David. But anyway, that's a preview. But anyway, so getting back to sitting under the redwoods, it's just so wonderful. And I saw a little moth, a white, very white moth, was fluttering along, flying through the. I think can't remember. It might have been Solomon seal. I'm not sure, but one of the plants that grows there in the understory. And so I said, "Wow, what is this? What is this wonderful thing?" And I got sort of an answer. Now this was kind of a waking reverie. Oh, I should talk about imagination, okay? Because I mentioned that before, okay? Many, many, many times I've had very moving experiences, and because it happened in my mind, I said, that was my imagination. I made that up. Um, well, what I've come to see is that imagination plays a big effect. It has a big effect. It plays a big part, okay? But it's not everything. Usually, imagination and real connection with the divine kind of go back and forth. I wrote a blog about this, which is on ananda.org. Maybe some of you remember it if you saw it. It was about me having an interaction with Divine Mother over grating carrots. Um, but what it was, with her answer to me in that situation, I won't tell the whole story, but her answer to me, I said, "Is this my imagination or is this really you?" And she said, "Oh, it's partly me and it's partly you. And as you get better, as you progress on the spiritual path, it'll be more me and less you, and that's just fine." So I got that message. Okay, it's it's both. So don't be afraid to imagine, to let your imagination run, because it will be influenced. Okay, but be fully aware that you could be selling yourself a lie. It might not be that at all. A lot of it has to do with watching the heart and see what the heart's doing and whether there's that particular kind of disturbance in the force going on in the heart. So it's real interesting, but it's worth doing. Okay. So anyway, I'm sitting underneath the redwood trees and I'm feeling, this is so wonderful. What's happening? And I got kind of a message, kind of a thought formed message. Okay. And it was from the spirit Davids that were living there in this little glen, this beautiful, magical little glen. And they said, "Oh, we are so happy to have you here. We're so happy to host you. You, a human. We just absolutely are, are, are overwhelmed with gratitude that you would come here and commune with us. Thank you so much." And I felt like they were kind of putting me on a pedestal. I didn't feel like anything that special, but well, anyway, if they were doing that, that's okay. And they say, "Oh yes, um, you can pursue a spiritual path. You don't know what a tremendous gift that is." And okay, so then I said, "Yeah, I've been watching that moth over there." And they said, "Oh yes, isn't it wonderful? The moth can move. It can move from one place to another. Um, the plants are basically stuck where they are and they can't move, but the moth has that freedom. Isn't that wonderful?" It was like these nature spirits were just everything was wonderful for him. Okay, and I thought about it a little bit, and I said, "Well, yeah, but the moth doesn't really have all that much free will. Where it goes depends on pheromones that it gets from other moths or chemical signatures from plants that it needs to go to, and it's really doesn't have a lot of freedom." Okay, and and I'm not sure quite how this conversation wound up, but basically the nature spirits are saying, "Yes, And you have that freedom to not follow the pheromone paths and to follow the path to God, even if it's not obvious for you. And I thought, yeah. And I compared myself to the moth. Am I following the pheromone paths and the chemical signatures of all my desires and all the, you know, I really like this car. I want to go get this car, or I like antique gadgets and I want to get more antique gadgets, or all the other things that I get involved with that take up the time which I could otherwise be spent meditating. All time is wasted that is not spent seeking God. And it was like through their praise, the nature spirits were saying, were putting me on the spot.
Right.
And they were saying, "Oh, and you, we admire you so much because you can do this." And am I really doing it?
That's great.
And I thought, wow, it was not nasty in any way. It was full of praise and it was full of wonder and full of joy and full of love. And yet it got the point across. And I thought, I could never make up anything like that. See, that's the thing about imagination. You get to the point. At first, when the two voices were speaking to me, it said, "Oh, you're adoring that cat." I could think, well, yeah, I thought that. But when it said, "That's what we're doing with you," I didn't think that.
Right.
Okay. All right. So there's this kind of, thing. So there's lots more stories, but we're at our 8:15 point.
Wow.
And so I thought that we'd open it up for, I don't want to just say questions. Let's talk about it. Let's, if you have some experiences this way, fine. If we can, and also we want to, for you online, we want to take a look at what your questions and thoughts are. And I think I see one, but I can't read it.
I can read it to you. Did you want to share about your rock real quick?
Oh, okay. Well, I will. All right. And I'll put this up near the camera too.
Yeah.
Take a look at this rock. I think Barbara, who's online, has seen this. Okay, I'll pass it around for everybody. Okay. Savitri has one of the things that Savitri does. Okay, I'll hold it up to the right there. One of the things that Savitri does is wherever we go, we tend to get attracted to riverbeds where there's a lot of river washed cobbles. Okay. And Savitri also has a magnetism. She has a magnetism to find heart rocks. I think a lot of people like to search for heart rocks, and you find them every so often. They're pretty rare, but you find them every so often. We were up on that trip to Happy Camp, and we went up a side canyon, and we found a lot of rocks. When there's a lot of rocks in the riverbed, Savitri disappears for a long time. I go find something else to do. Okay? And this one, I think we were both walking along. We both saw it at the same time.
Okay.
Now, if anybody knows about geology, Savitri said that somebody looked at that and said, "That's impossible." Somebody painted that. Okay. If you look at the texture of the rock, it's different rock is the white than than the black stuff in the background. I can swear that it was a natural rock, as far as I can tell. Somebody could have created it and left it there, but this was a pretty wilderness location, and it was after, it was in the springtime when a flood would have, changed things around. So I think it's a natural rock, but it's extraordinary.
Can I take a picture of that?
You what?
Picture?
Can she
She
take a
wants to
picture?
take a picture.
Oh yeah, take a picture. Yeah, yeah. One person we showed it to took a picture, and it wound up on our Facebook homepage.
Wow.
So
I just wanted to show my husband.
yeah, oh yeah, take the picture.
So I can read you what.
Okay, let's do questions.
It's not a question. It's just something for you, Sudarshan, from Josette.
Okay.
Thank you, Sudarshan, so much for saying that the imagination and the reality of an experience are both real. So helpful and supportive. Thank you for your grace and your presence for us all.
And thank you too. Okay.
I
And it
have-
looks like this is the only thing that's on here. So
Right now.
let's see what we've got for folks here.
Well, I could share something really quick.
Okay.
This actually happened right on the way over, which is really interesting. That I
Mhm.
didn't get until you just started talking about
Uh-huh.
sharing your stories. Was we were
I appreciate you taking the mask down because I hear you
it's
better.
okay, and they can hear better too. So if you talk, go ahead and take your mask down.
Okay.
We were driving really slow over on the way
Right.
because I always drive slow,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
coming down, and all of a sudden, it's dusk,
Right.
and these three deer just jump across the road right in front of me,
Uh-huh.
and I had to pretty much slam on the brakes.
Yeah. Right.
And those little stinkers jumped back across the road again.
Oh my goodness.
And like they were playing with each other, like
then back
and
again.
then back
I've been
again.
watching them chase each
I
other.
Times.
saw them too.
Yeah.
They're
So
just cheering across it.
yeah, without any like they didn't even see the vehicle, or they like, oh, these are Ananda drivers, they'll stop for us. We could
Yeah.
just but three times. That's the first time I've had that happen since I've been here and
That's
driving around.
amazing. I've been noticing some odd things with the deer. Uh, one thing that I noticed years ago was I was down at the Master's Market, and there used to be wild cats around there. Not so much anymore. I think they're still there sometimes, um, but a little kitten and a fawn were chasing each other.
Oh.
The kitten would chase the fawn, and then the fawn turned out to chase the kitten, and they were going back and forth and back and forth on the lawn. And I thought they're having fun.
Yeah.
And then just the other day, I was sawing a log out in front of the house that had fallen. There was a big oak tree that fell out
Oh,
in
right,
the front
that one,
yard.
right in front of us too.
Yeah, and there was a mating thing happening. A buck was chasing a doe. Okay, and Savage and I both felt sorry for the does that they're being harassed by these horny, bucks. But I got a little bit of a different view of it this time. They both they were both one of them jumped over the log. They were right next to me. I was out there chopping away on the wood, and they did. I was just part of the landscape as far as they were concerned, and they went about their business. And I talked to them. I talked to both of them. I said, "Hello, how are you guys doing? What are you up to?" And blah blah blah. And it's kind of like the doe looked at me. Well, what do you think is going on? And she paused and she peed on the ground, and no big deal. It wasn't like she was scared or frightened or feeling harassed, as best as I could. Okay, and the buck looked like he was transfixed somehow. He had this big grimace on his face. It was really funny, and he went up and he just had to smell that pee for a long time, which I think is a whole mating pheromone, thing. And uh, but the doe kind of pranced off a little bit. I told him, "Hey, I'm going to chop some wood here. I'm going to make some noise, and don't be scared." Well, they weren't. They got the idea that I was just part of the landscape, and they were just part of the landscape. Just it was all nature was all happening all together, and that was another thing I wanted to share with this is that in nature is that in some way, and I'm not sure how to do it, you become part of it. It becomes part of you. I think the Native Americans were used to that, just lived that, but it's a very foreign thought for most people who have grown up in Western society and not close to the wilderness. So,
We have one thing.
oh, good. Okay.
Sambhava's asking or saying, charming story, Sudarshan. Thank you for sharing your inspiration and love of nature. Good night, all. That was Sambhava.
Good. Thank you, Sambhava. So, yeah.
So I was really amazed how you said your stories, and they were so intertwined with your experience, and it really created an environment that was so real and kind of touching the heart.
Okay.
It's very nice.
Okay.
But the best thing that touched me, because I'm going through that also, that you talked about your vision quest when you got the stone, the bone, and saw the
gnawing marks. Yeah.
gnawing marks, and that your dying youth is in one side and your quest on the other side. So that is gnawing on your dying.
Yeah.
So I'm almost in that point, and I'm just thought that wow. And I had a between inspiration and um, an imagination, some kind of thing that I was going through a real confused period, and then thought that well, these are going to clarify, and nothing is wasted. Nothing goes for waste.
Yeah.
Everything brings up a fruit at some point of time, but at this point I'm not able to understand that.
Yeah.
But it all um, leaves their mark on me and teaches me something.
Yeah. Divine Mother's working with each of us individually. I mean, she loves each of us so much.
Yes.
It's just, she's besotted with us, actually. And I tease her about it sometimes, but she, but she said, well, of course I am. You're my beloved son. You're my beloved daughter. I am absolutely 100% interested in you, and I love you so much, and I want you to find your way. Now, the other thing is, though, is that because it's part of her plan that we figure it out for ourselves with her. Now, who am I? Okay, we were talking about who am I? If I can be in communion with her enough, she is me.
Yeah.
Okay. And then her thoughts become my thoughts. And then I figured it out for myself.
And then you're just chasing each other around the yard.
It's wild. In seclusion, just this last seclusion that I took, I had a wonderful meditation, and I got up and I wanted to do energization. Or no, it wasn't a meditation. I think I was going to energize and then meditate, but I was just feeling very good, and I was wanting to practice the presence of God. I wanted to be with Divine Mother, and so I was trying to figure out how to do this because when I think I'm praying to Divine Mother, that immediately sets up a separation because it's I, as a separate being, am praying to Divine Mother or praying with Divine Mother. Okay. So two separate beings are standing next to each other, praying with each other. Okay. But they're still separate beings. Okay. And it boggles the mind how to figure this out. Okay. So at one point I was energizing and I was asking Divine Mother, oh, how do you like to um, how do you like to do the energization exercise? Are you enjoying it, doing it with me or in me? And she said, "Oh yeah, it's great. This is great." And I was thinking, yeah, I want to be praying with you. I want to be connecting with you all the time. And so at one point, I saw her face, and again, this is a feeling picture, kind of. I saw her face, and it was like she was going like this, and then she looked over at me and she winked. And and I said, what are you doing? She says, I was praying to Divine Mother. It was like she was messing with me with this identity thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, you know, it's somehow we learn how to get into oneness with everything. That oneness with time and space, that thing of Savitri and me working with feeling magnetized to a certain place. Okay. Um, uh, that time and space isn't a constraining thing. Okay. You might say, in some small way, we are one with that place that's calling us. Okay. And that's practice. We're practicing divine consciousness. I think we'll find as we go along in our lives that we've been practicing a lot all along. And we are much more divine beings than we thought we were. As soon as we start thinking, hey, I'm a divine being, this is really cool, then it's kind of like saying, wow, that's a spiritual eye. Okay, it's like we create a disturbance in the force. because what we're doing is we're jumping back into default mode of identifying as a separate being. Well, have some compassion for yourself. You've been doing it for 10 million years, for longer than that, because all through your animal incarnations, you were learning, you were moving more and more towards identifying as an individual,
Right.
and that's one of the gifts of humanity is that they identify as individuals. And then Divine Mother, I believe, I'm not quite sure, but it's kind of looking at this and saying, okay, you've done very good so far. Okay, now let's reverse the process and get you to where you become one with everything.
But consciously.
Yeah, and consciously, you're aware of it. Yeah. And meditation can help so much with that because doing Kriya over and over, and I hate to say this, but it takes years. It seems like for me anyway. But it's adding on. It's not a bad thing because what we're dealing with is um, uh, uh, we're dealing with an enormous reality. Okay, if you're going to be a god, you'd better be a god. And being God means you're conscious of everything that's happening in the entire universe all the time. Okay. Well, you said first.
That kind of gets to something that I wanted to ask you about
Yeah.
because,
Put your mask down.
oh, sorry,
Yeah. Okay.
as you tune in to nature outside of you, there is so much information and overwhelm in
Yeah.
this, just even touching the fraction of the oneness with it
Uh-huh.
all.
Yeah, good
And
point.
some of the best advice I got when I got here, and it might be just because of who I am,
Well, good.
is that I needed to stop standing with creation and I needed to stand with creator. And
Stand with which?
creator.
Creative.
So you had several stories both ways, a lot of stories about communing with nature, but also stories about communing with Divine Mother
Mhm.
and communing with Harry and Joe.
Joe and Harry.
Joe and Harry. Um, and so I go to like some of these classes and I don't want, and maybe it's just a phase in my
Yeah.
life, I don't want to be drawn back out to that place again.
Uh-huh.
So I seem to avoid, which has always been part of my nature,
Mm.
is, and I lived in the redwoods for a while,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
communing.
Uh-huh.
And yet, maybe it's just because of the place I need to be.
Mhm.
That I need to be communing with Divine Mother and not communing with nature.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know if, do you feel
I
that
I
pulled of
think
direction?
I think I'm getting what you're saying, and I do want to, Armati, we may have other things here. I do want to say to everybody, we're getting at 8:30, and I want to pledge that I would end officially at 8:30, but with that in mind, that we would continue as long as anybody wanted to. And so, and I wanted to before we get too far, I want to answer any other thoughts that people have online. But the quick one, I want to continue with this, but the quick thing that I would say is it is easy for it to be overwhelming.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, it is. And, and it is easy for us to freak out. I mean, it to be too scary. It's just too darn scary.
Yeah.
Too big and too
You
scary.
start to touch even, get very close to that oneness and it's just,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
I've had that
And
too.
right. And so I would say it's okay. Back off. Perfectly fine.
Mhm.
Divine Mother understands. And it's not like she's saying, oh, you poor thing, you haven't got it right. It's not that way at all. Not that way at all. Okay.
So does it need to be just a really balance?
Is what?
Like, does it have to be a balance? Like, we
I
have to
think
be
it's
able to
ultimately
see
a balance.
inside first to be able to commune well outside?
I think that little by little, bit by bit, you get more comfortable with it. Okay. It's kind of like, well, Yogananda talked about the canary in the cage. Okay. You know, you got a canary that lives in the cage, and you say, "Canary, I'm going to open the cage door and let you be free," and the thing's too scared. It's used to the cage. Okay, and he said that's the way we are. Okay, now if it's terrifying, stop.
Well,
It's
is
okay.
it terrifying or is it maybe inappropriate and we should be centered and grounded with God and Guru
Mhm.
rather than floating
Yeah,
with nature?
yeah,
Something
right.
like that.
If you start floating away, you can get lost.
Right.
There's plenty of room to get lost.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think one thing that Sudarshan's doing is he's been doing this for like he's talking about doing this stuff and exploring it little by little, bit by bit, and being lost a few times and a lot of other things uh, over 40 years. Okay, and so he's kind of glib about it. Okay, but he also had to say, "This is too much for me. I think I got to wait for a while." And your heart will let you know that. And I trust your heart. I think your heart is doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's my feeling about it.
It seemed very, very good advice for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good. So let's see. Before everybody signs off, let's see if we can answer a few more things.
Okay, so we've got Josette saying, do you think that the astral world is accessible through nature when you are in those moments of connection while in nature? And
Hmm.
if so, what would you suggest a good question to ask when we find ourselves in connection with the divine like that?
Okay, well, ask what's in your heart is what I'd say. I think that yes, you are in contact with, in quotes, the astral world. But the astral world, remember what Sri Yukteswar said about the astral world. He said that it's enormously vast. You think about the farthest star being 13 billion light years away. I think that's it. Okay. The physical universe is staggeringly, unbelievably vast. Okay. And the astral world's even bigger than that. He said it was like the balloon over the basket. Okay. So there's vast space in the astral world. Okay. So if we say that we're uh, in contact with the astral world, I think we're in contact with a part of the astral. Right. Okay. A certain zone. And the local zone, you know, if you're happen to be hiking there. And as far as what question to ask, I would consult your heart. And also, don't, you know, Swami used to say with people in his channeling book, he says, if you ask an astral being a question and then you get an answer, don't necessarily think it's the word of God. You know, I mean, he talked about channeling astral beings, and people think, "Oh my gosh, I had an astral being come and speak through me." Well, you got to watch out. I didn't touch on this, but it deals it bears touching on is that there are negative astral beings too. This is another reason that it's good to be scared, okay, or good to be uncomfortable, okay. Um, and I've had experience with some pretty nasty ones, okay. And Swami said that you know there are a certain class of astral beings that are looking to live a life through a human being, and you know this can even get so as far as possession, okay. Not a good thing, okay. And a lot of that has to do with, I think, what you're talking about is this kind of emptiness of spirit and just saying, "Hey, come on in."
Right. Don't
Okay,
invite them in.
or to the universe, to this enormous universe. Hey, come on in. I'll just float with it. You know.
Yeah.
No, I
Well,
don't want it.
I
I
don't.
want I
I
want
think we
audience.
want this.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, and so that's where again, you know, again, I'm looking at Sudarshan and saying this. Sudarshan spent a lot of time meditating. Okay, and really trying to tune in with the masters, and the masters protect you. By the way, when I had that one really difficult experience with a negative astral entity, master pulled me out of it. It was Yogananda. Yogananda went, and I could tell the story, but it's too long. But 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 anyway, so it's vast. It's huge. So, and then what question to ask? I would say what question comes to your heart, and and then take it with a grain of salt too. Um, uh, your magnetism depends, and your karma. Okay, if your karma and your magnetism are such that you're drawing pretty high beings, you're probably going to get pretty high answers. Now, you could have karma that's hidden. You don't even, I mean, you don't know what it is. Um, you could have some negative karma that's hidden, and an astral being could be attracted to that. So it's a big, wide world, and it's the Wild West.
Very good.
So, okay, so Aramati, are there more that we should pay attention to? Because we're getting kind of overtime.
No.
Okay, we're all good.
We're all good.
Okay, okay. So again, we're officially done. But if anybody here wants to say anything more or finish up anything, you can do it. Or if anybody online wants to. Okay.
You know, I just wanted to say that, you know, I grew up on a farm and I didn't, my brothers were really older. And so my best friend was nature, you know, so
Uh-huh.
that was it. And, so my experiences have taught me that of that connection and how, you know, especially nature and flowers and plants. I mean, everybody, you know, it's like they really love being appreciated, you know. So yeah, and I've had them, you know, just reflect back to me, you know, how those qualities that we are, you know. So one was snowdrops, you know, and the message from the snowdrops. I was just so in love with them. I was just dying over them. They were just so beautiful and so strong. And it just, you know, the words just came of, you know, your mirror, you know, mirror.
A mirror.
Yes. So they're mirroring to us our beauty, our strength, our divinity.
Yeah.
And so, and then plants, and then remember at Laurelwood, I had that one, asparagus fern. His name was Gus. And so I've always like talked to plants and, you know, and felt them. And so I had this big asparagus fern and I called him Gus and he was, I had a kind of a retreat place and Gus was in the living room. And so we had a lot of sessions and stuff in that room and he would just like, he had like tendrils, you know, he would just like come out and everything. And then I was told to sit with them more, you know. And so I didn't one night I'm like turning out the lights and everything and I see Gus and you know I didn't like sit and just be with the plants and just, you know, meditate with the plants. And so I told him I was sorry. I didn't sit with them that much that day. And I just heard immediately, we never judge you. You do that. And then I had trees to, you know, I have a whole book of conversations with trees that were like my best. This one Douglas fir tree was my best friend during a very difficult time, you know, so they're like our allies, you know, they're our spirit guides and it was so wonderful. And it started, so just appreciate them. It started when I was like, we had this park behind us and I'd go by and this big Douglas fir is right on the trail. And I just looked at him one time when I was leaving and I just put my hands on it and I just said, thank you, you know, and then I just started walking and he says, thank you. Serious? I didn't make that up. I was like, thank you. And so then I like was like, you know, and then I was taking care of my husband's mother and it was so challenging and I would go there every day and I would just sit and first is that appreciation, you know, to appreciate them and like get in touch with their beauty and feel them and then I would like stare at something and then you get all blurry. You kind of go into a zone anyway, and then I would just get these words. He was like really one of my best friends.
Did he give you some advice about
He did.
taking care of the mom?
No.
No.
No. Well, just things about, my strength and
Mhm.
and then like some days I couldn't go there and sit with them and it seemed like a him. I don't know. He wasn't a him, but I called him a him. Anyway, and he told me that I didn't have to be there, that we were always connected. And
That's
all
eternity.
and
Time
it's
is
like
space.
people that pass away, all you have to do is think of them and be in your heart
Yeah.
and boom, that's
Yeah.
eternity. There that's
Yeah,
that's the
exactly.
quantum field. It's all there,
I was just saying goodbye to a friend at a farewell party, and I just looked at her and I said, we're together all the time anyway.
Yes.
So, I mean, it
Yes.
takes some doing to do that,
Yes.
and we need to work on it. But we are ultimately
Yes,
we're all
and
together.
I had experiences at Mount Shasta or different places, and they were so dear to me, and I wanted, I just wanted to go back. And then I went back with my son to this one place where I had this experience, and they just said, you don't have to do this. All we have to do is think about them and appreciate them.
Yeah.
Makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Woo, we're there.
Well, it
And
makes
I
it a lot
inspired
easier, but there's more to it too. It's a bigger, wider thing. So,
Yeah.
well, so are we?
Lovely. Yeah.
Are we ready
Yeah.
to
We're
close it
wrapping
up?
up. Yeah.
Okay, so
No more.
everybody online, it looks like we're getting done. So does anybody have anything else to say before we sign off?
There's an ohm.
Om.
Oh, you wanted to?
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
That's true.
Let's go inward and close our extended session by just going inward and meditating a little bit. And let's do 3 ohms. And let's do 1 ohm for each other. And let's do another ohm for all of nature and everything living in nature. And let's do another ohm for Divine Mother and for the source of all things. So. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Amen. And Aramati says, stay tuned for
More
the
to
next
come.
the next Swadhyaya class is coming. So
Next year.
sometime next year.
Next year.
So good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome.